Well, the battle going down in Wisconsin and elsewhere, pitting Republican governors against organized labor, not just to fight over budget numbers and workers' rights. It's a battle that could actually have huge political implications in 2012 and beyond, as a core Democratic constituency could see its manpower and its money greatly diminished. Here now for a fair and balanced debate is Tony Sayegh, a Republican consultant, and Susan Estridge, a professor of law and political science at the University of Southern California. She's also a syndicated columnist and Fox News contributor, and it's great to see both of you. And Susan, let me start with you. I want to talk about the politics, and then I want to ask you a little bit, both of you, about the substance here. Where would the Democratic Party be as a whole without organized labor?
Well, it probably wouldn't have a headquarters because organized labor helped pay for the headquarters for the Democratic Party. But certainly organized labor is a key element in the Democratic coalition. But I think the issues here, Rick, go beyond organized labor. I mean, if this gets pushed too far, I think you're going to see a lot of working people, whether they're labor union members or not, and a lot of voters saying, hey, wait a minute. You know, the one thing we don't like is this kind of confrontational, partisan, ugly politics. And that's what this is beginning to look like.
Tony, how much of this has to do with the money, back to the money that Susan mentioned, that unions contribute to Democratic candidates, and a chance for the Republicans to really put a dent in that cash flow?
Well, listen, Rick. Everybody can go to opensecrets.org. It's a website that discloses what organizations spend on federal campaigns, and you'll see that 95% of union donations go to the Democratic Party, and also big labor is big money. I think 10 of the most comprehensive and organized labor groups are in the top 10 of the biggest donors to federal campaigns. So it's almost exclusively about money, I think, with the Democratic Party. Susan mentioned a perfect analogy right now, which is this middle class, right? Well, the labor thinks they represent the middle class exclusively, but they only represent their union members' interests. The middle class that pays for the bills that these pensions and health benefits cost are revolting against this. We saw it in 2010, and it's going to continue. And I think the Democrats make a very dangerous calculation if they think that they can wage class warfare with this, because the reality is it's the middle class that's paying these unsustainable pension benefits.
Susan, did I hear you right? Do you think that there's a danger for the Republicans to overreach here? I'm wondering, what is the path? What is the path to some kind of a political victory here for the Democrats?
Well, I think the path to victory for Democrats is, in some sense, the obverse of the path to defeat for Republicans. I mean, look, you got guys like Chris Christie, Republican governor of New Jersey, saying, I don't want any part of this, okay? I want to sit down with the public employees in my state, just like I'm going to have to sit down with everybody, quite frankly, and we're going to have to come up with some program of shared sacrifice where we all pitch in. And this business of demonizing your local school teacher, your local firefighter, your local police officer, as if they caused this credit crisis, I think Chris Christie is right. I think Governor Walker is wrong. And I think the uglier this gets, it will hurt the person or people who started it, which in this case is Governor Walker.
And Tony, Chris Christie is not alone. There are some other Republican governors who are also on the record as saying that they're not entirely in favor of stripping unions, these public unions, of their collective bargaining agreements and their rights. There's Governors Scott and Christie and Daniels and Sandoval, none of whom want to go quite as far as Governor Walker in Wisconsin is going here. And there's a poll that I read that says 61% of the people in this country, this is a USA Today poll, said that they would not like a Wisconsin-type law passed in their state.
Well, Rick, let's first of all address what Governor Walker is trying to do, which is to not end collective bargaining. It's to make it voluntary. Right now you have forced unionization in Wisconsin. You don't have that in 24 other states in this union. I think their workers actually make higher wages, and their states experience better economic growth as a result. But if you look at Governor Christie, who now apparently is a moderate in the eyes of big labor, which I think is quite a feat, he has a political reality that's far different than Governor Walker. Governor Walker has a Republican House and a Republican Senate. Governor Christie has 2 Democratic-controlled houses in his legislature. Governor Scott in Florida has a right-to-work state, so he doesn't have the same problems as Walker. And the governor of Nevada, who I believe you mentioned as well, thinks teacher tenure is a much more important issue for him to tackle than collective bargaining. We are a federalist country. States get to determine what works best for their states, which is why generally Republicans don't like these big federal type programs and solutions. But at the end of the day, Governor Walker is doing what he has to do, which is to plug a $3.6 billion deficit that he has inherited. And Rick, if I could make one last point, he also wants to end, as part of this, these union contracts that last 4 years. He wants to make each contract only last 1 year, so the people who make these deals have to pay for them. That doesn't happen in America today.
Susan, final thought here. Weigh in on this. And this time, you know, and Tony talked about the economy. When states are strapped for cash, do the unions have too much power and too little incentive to sit down and rework some of these contracts that were worked out a long time ago that simply are not feasible and sustainable right now?
Look, if the state shuts down, the first people to suffer are state employees. And there's no question every state is going through a painful time. My state is as well. But demonizing one political group and making it appear that they're the problem and they're going to pay the price is never good politics.
Susan Estrich, Tony Sayegh, thank you both for coming in on a Saturday. Always nice to talk to you.
Thanks, Rick.